up, my wizards? Dev, SBMTG down there. Usually I either have decks or spoilers for you. Today I'm going to do something I don't think I've ever done before and give you both. I'm going to give you a spoiler, something really impactful it looks like that came out this morning, and I'll give you a deck tech to go along with it because I've been playing with the card a lot today. Super excited. This is Thing in the Ice, which is just the coolest name ever, and it transforms into Awoken Horror. The other day I had a blind subscriber comment and tell me, you know, you really ought to start reading these cards. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, and I apologize for not having seen that. That is a great point, and I'm going to start reading these cards when I do spoil them. So, Thing in the Ice. What's it do? Well, this is a 2-mana 0/4 that's a generic and a blue mana for a 0/4 horror with Defender. When it comes into play, it gets 4 ice counters on it, and whenever you cast an instant or a sorcery spell, you remove an ice counter from it. When it has no ice counters on it, you transform it. And it transforms into a 7/8 Kraken Horror named Awoken Horror. With, when this creature transforms into Awoken Horror, return all non-horror creatures to their owner's hands. What? Like, it seems absolutely ridiculous. And people are already pointing out the potential of this card in eternal formats. That's, and it's serious, such is the hype of this card on day 1 so far. You know, in a modern, it seems like it'd be pretty easy to flip on turn 3 with like Ataxian Probe and some other free spells, Phyrexian mana spells, and Legacy. Even easier to flip, obviously, on turn 3. And people are comparing this to the almighty Tarmogoyf already. And it's not Tarmogoyf, but some people are saying it's actually better than Tarmogoyf. You know, we'll have to wait and see. This goes along with other format staples and Legacy, you know, not Legacy, but Eternal formats. Like Delver of Secrets, play Delver turn 1, play this turn 2, you're set to go. In Standard, which is sort of what this channel is more concerned with, for the most part, people are talking about sort of the opposite of an aggro-based sort of flip this as fast as possible deck. People are talking about a control deck, either blue-white or blue-black, that only plays this in Jace. It's only creatures. Maybe the blue-white version will play the Jutai, obviously. And just nothing but a control shell centered around these, you know. You can play a Jutai's Command with this pretty effectively, because not only is Jace a target in those decks, but this is also a fantastic target in decks with a Jutai's Command. I like the Jutai's Command idea an awful lot, and that's actually what I've been doing today as far as playing the deck. I'm going to try and look at it from a modern player's perspective, because we're going to see, and I'm sure I'm going to do, decks based around the control shell and this card. Guaranteed, you know. But I figured I'd try and give you something funky today. And I've already been working on blue-white tempo, and this actually I thought might go really well, and I have, like I've said, played a few games with this card already, and it's really, really good, you guys. I've taken out the 4 copies of Verry Miscreants that I was working with, and I put in 4 copies of Thing in the Ice. So far the card has had very good interactions with not only Jutai's Command, but also Jace himself. Jace can recast cards out of your graveyard, and you can take ice counters off of this. This card is a very good later game or even mid-game top deck. Even if you draw in your opening hand, you sometimes won't play it on the 2nd turn. You'll play it on the 3rd or 4th, you know. Often if you have Jace and this in your opening hand, you'll play your Jace first. You know, you want to flip that quickly. But even on the 2nd turn, the card is good as an early game blocker. It's good as far as that's concerned in tempo, and it'll be good in that role in control decks, just putting a 4 toughness blocker on the field. When it does flip, returning everything to owner's hand in this deck is really good, because not only do we get rid of their creatures, which is the important part, but our creatures, when we pop them back to our hand, we've got Harbinger of the Tides, we've got Reflector Mage, we've got stuff in the deck that we benefit from multiple castings of. So returning things to our hand, not that big of a deal for us, might be terrible for them, and is especially bad for any builds that lean on tokens if we can flip this quickly enough. So plenty of reasons I've given you just now to really like this card, and interactions that I've seen. I played against a tokens deck, the green-white tokens deck from like a month ago. I've got that lying around, so I wanted to play it against this deck. And this deck does very well, as far as I can tell, against tokens variants, because if you can flip into Awoken Horror, you just completely wipe the board of any tokens, and that's amazing. So just lots of reasons to love the card, and probably will see, you know, play in Standard. And this price down here, I should mention, is the pre-order price for the card right now. It could go up, could go down, who knows. This is speculative, and this is still day 1 at time of this recording. So who knows what's going to happen with that price, but I think it may hold. As far as I can tell in gameplay situations, the card is absolutely phenomenal. I'm telling you, the card is good. As far as the other creatures go, and I know I've spent, you know, what, 5-6 minutes already talking about the one card, but we got to talk about the rest of the deck here, and we're obviously playing Jace. He who shall not be named under most circumstances. But the deck just absolutely really wants this guy. Great tempo creature, allowing us to draw cards, loot things into the graveyard for a couple of different reasons. We can recast them later. That's all of that is good. Drawing cards in tempo is fantastic. When we do flip him, he's not a bad tempo play either, allowing us to recast things and have a little defense too. You can also just win the game outright too. Jace has good interactions with a lot of the things that we're trying to do in the deck, including I've already talked. He has good interactions with Thing in the Ice. So just, I'm sorry guys, you don't have to play Jace, and you will save like $280 if you don't play Jace. But I'm just really not sure what to tell you to play if you don't, honestly. Because Jace is really, really integral to the structure of the deck. And I apologize for that, but it's just the truth is the truth. 3 copies of Harbinger of the Tides in the deck. I don't feel like it's necessary to play the full play set in the deck, but this is still good against aggro and even mid-range decks. When playing on our 4th turn of Flash, it's one of the only 4-drops this deck could play. We could play Whirler Rogue. I'm not doing it here. And Ojutai's Command we have to play. But it's a good 4-drop. It's even a decent 2-drop in some situations too. Really, really like Harbinger and some of its interactions. We can return this to our hand with Clutch of Currents. We can flip into a Born Horror or Awoken Horror and return this to our hand, get another casting out of it. So I really like Harbinger. I love that you can play him with Flash, during their combat step. That's good too. So lots of reasons to play this card. Just an amazing card for tempo, dream card for tempo decks. So yeah, why we've got to play the card. 3 copies of Stratus Dancer in the deck, just really fantastic against targeted and mass removal, And we actually, considering playing Jace and Thing in the Ice, we need a little bit more defense than usual. This helps a lot against things like Languish and Planar Outburst. So you gotta have Stratus Dancer. And hey, 2/1 flyer for 2 and bad, if you need that, those are pretty good stats too. 4 copies of Reflector Mage in the deck, one of the big reasons outside of Ojutai's Command to play white. If those were the only 2 white cards we played, it'd be worth playing white. Reflector Mage is just semi-broken. We're not playing Eldrazi Displacer, and it's still a ridiculous card in the deck, This has been in a lot of things already in the format. Bant Company plays this card very effectively. And we can return this to our hand with Clutch of Currents, or an Awoken Horror. That when you return to your hand with Awoken Horror, this has come up a couple of times in gameplay today already. You flip into Awoken Horror, returning everything to the hands of both players. Then when they go, they have to play 2 creatures. Or next turn you'll play Reflector Mage, bounce whatever they play back to their hand, and they have no blockers for your 7-power guy. So that can actually be really, really impactful, Reflector Mage can, in those situations. So Reflector Mage is just good on the 3rd turn, good late game top deck, really, really good for tempo decks, obviously geared towards tempo. So Reflector Mage is an absolute no-brainer. It's really the whole reason that blue-white tempo could even possibly exist. Now into the spells. We're playing 19 of them in the deck. That's a lot. We have to have a lot for Awoken Horror, and we have Thing in the Ice and Awoken Horror, and we have to have a lot for Jace. So 19 I think is a pretty good number, but I'd like to increase it to 20. I just don't know that I want to take a land out, to be honest with you. But I said earlier that we want to approach this from a modern player's perspective and flip Awoken Horror into Awoken Horror as quickly as possible. So we have to play a lot of cheap spells. We're playing 10 1-mana cost blue spells in the deck. So let's go ahead and get those over with. We're playing 4 copies, and I'll go to the graphic. We're playing 4 copies of Rush of Ice. We're playing 4 copies of Clutch of Currents and 2 copies of Slip Through Space. Slip Through Space not only draws us the cards, which is what we want. There are something like 12 different effects in the deck that draw cards. That's pretty important for a tempo deck. This is one of them for just the 1 mana and can help get Awoken Horror through. When you say go and they drop a creature, this will just, or 2 creatures, which they may do, this will help you get Awoken Horror through for 7, and you draw a card. It doesn't get blocked. So that Slip Through Space can be really good with Horror. Aside from that, it just sort of subscribes to, and all of these 1 mana cost cards do, subscribes to sort of the theory and tempo that you want to be able to play as many cards in 1 turn as you can. Although an advantage we have over most tempo decks is that we have really good later game top decks. Jace is always good late game. Thing in the Ice is actually surprisingly good late game. Ojutai's Command is quite good late game. We've got decent removal late. So lots of good. Reflector Mage is good late. We've got a lot of stuff that's good late, which is not, super typical of a lot of tempo decks. As far as Rush goes, this just removes a creature from combat for effectively 2 turns. That's awesome in a tempo deck, allowing us to just get our smaller dudes through, and in some cases, our huge guys through. This is just the same as some of the other cards I've talked about already, in that when you flip into Awoken Horror, which you can tell how much of the deck is based around this card already, and I just slotted it in. When you flip into Awoken Horror, they will again often cast a creature on their turn to block your Awoken Horror. Well, you can just tap it and not have to worry about that. That's awesome. With these 2 Awaken cards here, Clutch and Rush, I should also mention that you can cast cards out of your graveyard with Jace for their awaken cost. That's good because first, second turn, you can always cast one of these 2 cards, then later on recast it with Jace and get a creature out of it. That's pretty awesome. And Clutch of Currents is especially good because it works with the creatures that we want to pop back to our hand if need be. So not only is it a removal element against their creatures, but also works pretty well with our guys too. And just for 4 mana, we can clutch a Reflector Mage back to our hand and replay it. That can actually be maddening for our opponent. So all 3 of these cards are good. They're all cheap. They all, allow us to flip into Awoken Horror very, very quickly. So lots of, reasons to play all of these as far as I'm concerned. Tempo decks want to play a lot of cheap cards that do things to disrupt their tempo, obviously, and all 3 of these are really clutch and rush disrupt their tempo. And Slip allows us to draw cards and get the huge guy through for sort of the finishing touch, the finishing blow. So, all 3 of these have proven very good, and I wasn't sure about Slip Through Space at first, but it has been great with Awoken Horror. We're playing 3 Declaration and Stone in the deck. I've played a lot with this card now too in multiple decks at this point since it was spoiled a few days ago. This card is fantastic. Although there are some downsides. If you remove their guy on your turn because it's sorcery speed and they have mana open, they will often at the end of your turn just draw a card. That actually kind of sucks in some ways, and they've always got that sitting on the battlefield for whenever they need an option. If they need an option, they can always break that egg and draw a card. That's not great, but this does exile the most important threat on their side of the board, and that's always good. It's much better than Reality Shift, which I've already pimped a million times. Even though Reality Shift was at a better speed than this. Sorcery speed is not that big of a deal on a 2-mana exile piece of removal, especially considering we already play Silk Wrap, which is a little bit more narrow than this in a lot of ways, and Silk Wrap is a fantastic card. This is, in a lot of ways, a substitute for really a step up from Silk Wrap, from what I've seen so far, and I've replaced Silk Wrap with this in a lot of decks, especially considering Jace can recast this and it can't recast Silk Wrap. That is very, very important for a lot of these decks that run, blue and white and Esper decks and stuff. So remember that going forward. Being able to recast this with Jace is incredibly important. Just the card is unconditional removal for 2 mana, and even at sorcery speed, that is absolutely amazing. I'm playing 3 copies of Grip of the Royal in the deck. It's, parity with Rush of Ice, and it's actually really good alongside Rush of Ice. You Rush of Ice and you can play this for 2 mana, tapping another guy for 2 turns, for 2 full combat cycles, and draw a card. Grip of the Royal is actually really good, and I've talked about it before a couple of times in other deck decks. I'd like to play 4 copies of the card, to be honest with you. It's that good, and since we're playing 10 1-mana cost things in the deck, very, very easy to surge this out. So the card has been great. I've played this over Send to Sleep, which I usually like in tempo decks, but I like this much more than Send to Sleep because it draws us the card and takes a creature out of combat for our combat, their combat, and our next combat. That is 3 combat steps that in effect like this removes a creature from combat. That's absolutely amazing. And to finish off the main deck, 3 copies of Ojutai's Command. I immediately put 4 in when I saw a thing in the eyes, but over the course of the day I've cut it down to 3. I don't want to see this all the time. I don't want it clogging up my hand, especially considering we're only playing 23 lands in the deck. Now a control variant that plays 4 Jace and 4 Thing, which I love. I always say that the cards are a thing, and now I can actually say that about Thing in the Eyes. But in any case, you play 4 Jace, you play 4 Thing, and 4 Jutai's Command, and you sort of let the shell of control develop around that. In this deck, I'd like to play 4 Jutai's Command, but I just, there's part of me doesn't want it clogging up my hand. That was a problem earlier when I tried to do that. So 3 has been fairly comfortable since I've switched over to that. Just obviously Jace and Thing are the reasons to play the card, but it can also hit Harbinger of Tides, so that's good too. It's just another option to have. This is really good against bigger creatures they try to play late. This gets us back in the game against aggro decks that have had a really good start against us. Draws us a card. Aggro or tempo decks love every single thing this does, and it's great at the very top of our curve to sort of, counter whatever big threat they're trying to outclass us with and draw a card. That's always very, very good. So, or counter whatever big threat they're trying to get and put our Thing in the Eyes back into play that they like ultimate price, So lots and lots and lots of reasons to play the card. It's an absolute no-brainer. So let me know if you play 3 or 4. I'm interested in that. Here's our land base. We're playing 23 of them, and you don't have to play Evolving Wilds. I just don't think we're doing too much on our first turn. And yeah, we're playing 10 things that cost just the 1 mana, but they're all, reactive cards. Slip Through Space, though, it's not reactive, but we have to have a creature on the battlefield before we play it. So we're not doing a whole lot, or at least as much as it looks like we're doing on our first turn. I feel like it's safe to play Evolving Wilds. And we need our white sources when we need them, so I like Evolving Wilds, is all I'm saying. You don't have to play it. But barring any amazing lands that we see in Shadows over Innistrad, which could happen, really not a whole lot of options outside of, you know, battle or tango lands and basic lands. Really not. So this is what I've done, and it's worked. Here's our sideboard here, which is fairly important, but I still feel like needs work. You know, I feel like there's a lot of options in the format for the deck, but the sideboard is going to shift, and really this applies to any deck in the format that's trying to be a thing post-rotation. The sideboard is probably going to have to dramatically shift once we see what Shadows of Innistrad is. But you could play Hallowed Moonlight in this. I didn't elect to do that. That would probably be a great idea. But I haven't elected to do that in testing so far. But there are obviously some important things in this sideboard right here. Dispel could make the main deck. I could definitely see that. I've already talked about the importance of being able to counter removal when you're playing Jace and Thing in the Eye. So Dispel could make the main deck, and I wouldn't fault you for that. Silk Wrap, I've decided to board in favor of Declaration and Stone, but it still has a place in the board, I think, against heavy aggro. Felidar Cub is just a good option against decks that play enchantments. I like that option. Surge of Righteousness is probably still going to be good, considering I've already said I think red aggro will still try to be a thing if aggro is an important deck at all. And so something like Surge can be really good, and obviously black is a very good color. People are already talking about Rakdos aggro being good, so Surge is just a very, very good card. Clash of Wills could also make the main deck, along with Void Shatter, to sort of counter any big things they try to outclass us with. And Exile is very important in this format. So, you know, a lot of these cards could make the main deck. And there are definitely other sideboard options in the format. So let me know how you change this sideboard. And here are your power rankings for the deck. A final score of Nintendo 64. That's not really that bad at all. That's a very competitive deck. And I feel like the control variant of the deck may be a little higher, but it won't be anywhere near as fun. Hey, you alright, buddy? I got a kitty kiss. Very resilient deck, much more so than it looks like with the addition of, you know, Jutai's Command and Jace. Those are both incredibly resilient cards. And we can cast things with Awaken with Jace. That can be really resilient, giving us a creature, and usually removing one of theirs. That's good. And there's other stats that we're good into. We're very consistent, and our synergy is relatively high because we got a lot of little synergies in our tempo deck here. And the only bad point here is the final cost for a deck that's only got a score of 64, which is competitive. Don't get me wrong. I just like the score to be slightly higher. Final cost is about $350, which is, you know, fairly low compared to some decks in the format. And the entire cost of the deck is really Jace. Jace is like 280 of those $350, so you're looking at about 70 bucks if you don't play Jace. If you don't want to play Thing in the Ice, then that's something like, you know, another $40 off, so you're looking at 30 bucks. You know, pretty good. There's a lot of different levels at which you can play this deck, and a lot of different, you know, budgets that you can play it at too. So try it out. You know, obviously we won't be able to get Thing in the Ice for another month or so, but you can pre-order it now. Although I'd wait and see what it does. Although, who knows, it may go up if it really is as important in Eternal formats as people are saying it is. Before I finish up, I want to talk about some things I didn't play. I didn't play Eldrazi Displacer because I didn't want to make the colorless mana in the mana base. But entirely possible to do that. It's amazing with Reflector Mage. I didn't play Just the Wind, another card that got spoiled this morning as of this recording. Just the Wind could be really good with Jace in a tempo-based deck, and it's just fine even if you're not playing it for its madness cost. But I'd really like to play it for its madness cost, and I think that Jace being the only thing in the deck that allows us to discard isn't quite reliable enough, but maybe. And I love the name of the card and the flavor, that's great. And I didn't play Ojutai or the new Avacyn. Archangel Avacyn, because in this tempo deck it's more sort of, like I said earlier, I want to cram as many things into one turn as possible, and 5 mana cost things, you know, they're not conducive to that strategy. But in a more mid-rangey type deck, you could easily play either of those cards, especially Ojutai. Alright, that's all I got for today. I want to go back to playing with this card. I'm testing it not only in the control shell that I've brought up multiple times in the video, but in a couple of other things. I'm testing blue-green right now. We'll see how good that is. I'm not totally sure. It's like blue-green Eldrazi. We'll see. We'll see about that. But let me know what else you want to see. A lot of people responded well to the what do we do in aggro? What's next for aggro video? And a lot of people also responded late to the black-white Eldrazi control deck. So I've got a lot of things that I'm working on right now. Let me know what else you want to see, and I'll get right on that. I am Deb from SBMTG. If you enjoyed the content, and thanks for sticking in, this video is probably running fairly long. Like, share, comment, and if you're new, subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. I'm trying to get to 20K right now, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.